We were in the middle of the story of Yiftach, problematic shofet, who we just left off. He won a great victory, a great war, but then he either sacrificed or let his daughter live the end of her life, abandoned, alone, unmarried. And after winning the war, we have a similar story to something that happened with the last great shofet, which was Gidon. So we're continuing in chapter 12, verse 1. So the people of Ephraim, they came out and they went north. Yiftach is from the tribe of Menashe. And they said to Yiftach, Madua barta lechem bnei Ammon v'lanu lo karata lelechet imach beitcha nisrof alecha ba'ish. They said, why did you go to war against the Ammonites without us? Why don't you call us to wage war with you? We are going to burn down your house. Now, this is the second time that we had something like this. We had this a couple of chapters ago with Gidon, that after Gidon won his war, also people from Ephraim came and said, we're going to wage war against you. And there, what Gidon does is he appeases them. He said, you guys killed the generals, and really you won the war. You guys are great. He makes them feel good about themselves, and everything turns out okay. Yiftach, a very different person. I, and my people were in conflict with the Ammonites. It may sound like I was waging war against them for years. I am an Ishriv, I am a man who has been involved in conflict. And I called out for you. And we have this word sa'aka and za'aka used in many different ways in this chapter. And in the most recent chapters here in verse 1 is Vayitza'ek, which is the men of Ephraim are going out to wage war. We have that in past chapters also, describe the enemies of Israel going out to wage war. And here he says to them, Za'akti, I did call out for you, which you give it tzadi and the zayin, but very similar za'ak. They're saying we went out to war. Why didn't you call us? And we said, actually, I did call for you, and you didn't come. Continuing verse 3, Ki eincha moshia va'asima nafshi b'chapi ve'ebra el bnei Ammon va'itneim Adonai biyadi ve'lama litamei lai hayom azeh lilachem bi. He said, I saw you weren't coming. Nobody was coming to help me. So what did I do? I risked my own life, the life of my people, and I crossed over into the territory of the Ammonites, and God gave them to me. And I was successful, and I won my victory. I won the battle. Like both Yiftach had called on Gilad, Vayilachem et Ephraim. So the Ephraim, right? They come and they threaten the people of Menashe with the followers of Yiftach. But now what ends up happening is Yiftach gathers the people of Gilad, who he's been made the head of their people, and he goes and he wages war against them. Vayaku anshe Gilad et Ephraim ki amru klitei Ephraim atem. Gilad betoch Ephraim betoch Menashe. The men of Gilad defeated the Ephraimites because they said that the Giladites are, right, the Ephraimites were insulting the people from Gilad. And now Gilad said that you're nothing, you're just fugitives. You're nothing like us. And what we're trying to see here, part of what's going on is we have Bnei Israel imploding. Here we have the two sons of Yosef, Menashe and Ephraim, where if we go back to the time of Yaakov, and Yaakov puts his right hand on the head of the younger son, Ephraim, and Yosef says to him, switch their hands. Menashe is the older son, and Yaakov says, no, he'll be great, but his brother will be greater than him. And while Menashe at that point seems to accept it, there may be tension that goes on. And this is not the first place where we've seen the tension between Menashe and Ephraim, and it seems to be related to just general tension that may be happening between different tribes, right? We haven't had really stories where we have all of the tribes together. And it's most evident here when you have two tribes that come from, this is not right, Yehuda versus Yosef. One is from the son of Rachel and one is son from Leah. These are people who are from the same family, and they're having that fight as well. And it's tragic. Continuing verse 5, it's only going to get worse. The Giladites, they had the fords. So they were by the Jordan, and they were in control of the people who wanted to cross over. So right, so the Ephraimites were there, and the people from Menashe would want to, the people from Menashe were there, and people from Ephraim wanted to cross over. they would say to them, are you from Ephraim? And of course, Menashe is at war with Ephraim. So the people from Ephraim say, no, we're not from Ephraim, because, then they're suspected they're now enemies of the Giladites who are from the tribe of Menashe. So they say, no, of course you're not from the tribe of Ephraim. And then comes a test, which many of you are probably familiar with. Vayomru lo, emor na shibolet, vayomer sibolet. There were different dialects of Hebrew. I was down here in the Virgin Islands for this wedding, and I heard people from all different parts of the country speaking American English in all sorts of different ways. And that's what goes on here. The Giladites would ask the people who were crossing over, if you're really from the tribe of Ephraim, you should say the word, they say the word Shibolet, but if you're from Ephraim spoke a different dialect, and they didn't pronounce the Shin properly, and they said Sibolet. Continuing in verse 6, came, Vayochazu oto vayishchatuhu el ma'abrot hayarden vayipol ba'etim Ephraim arba'im ushnayim alaf. And when they said Sibolet, the people from the tribe of Menashe, the Giladites, they slaughtered those from the tribe of Ephraim because they knew that they were not, and tragically 42,000 people died. And so we have here in this civil war, I believe, more people than are dying due to the enemies of Israel. And they're really imploding this idea, right? The word Shibolet is used in different contexts to mean a password. And so this is a place where it was a password. If you were able to pronounce it properly, then they knew you were from the tribe of Menashe. And if not, you were from the tribe of Ephraim, and you were slaughtered as a result. Continuing in verse 7, we read the last verse about Yiftach. Vayishpot Yiftach Yisrael sheish shanim, vayamot Yiftach hagiladi, vayikaber ba'arei Gilad. Yiftach judges Israel for 6 years, and then he dies, and he's buried in the cities of Gilad. And what's missing here, and we saw this earlier, and now we're seeing it even more so, there's no after this, Vayishkot ha'aretz arba'im shana, or Vayishkot ha'aretz shmonim shana, or Vayishkot ha'aretz shmon esrei shana. There's no statement that the land was peaceful. There was no peace. And it's not surprising that there was no peace when there was the civil war that just happened. And so the cycle, yes, the Moshiach came. Yes, the Bnei Israel were saved. But the end of the cycle is supposed to be a time of peace until the Israelites once again sin. And we do not have that here. We never achieve that point. Yiftach's leadership never gets us to a point where Bnei Israel reach a sense of peace. And so it's telling, and that's, we said that the other day, that Yiftach and later on Shimshon are really problematic leaders at Shoftim. Now we have 3 more judges who are mentioned, who we really know very little about. And after Yiftach came Ivtzan from Bethlehem, Vayilo shloshim banim u'shloshim banot shilach hachutza u'shloshim banot mevi lebanav min hachutz vayishpot Yisrael shava shanim. He had 30 sons, and he married off 30 daughters outside the clan, and he brought in 30 girls from outside the clan for his son. So this was somebody who knew about genetics in the ancient period, and therefore he wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to have genetic problems, so he's not marrying cousins to cousins. And it actually makes sense with something else. And then we're told in the next verse, Vayamot Ivtzan vayikaber b'vayitulachem. Ivtzan died and he was buried in Bethlehem. Who is this person, Ivtzan? So according to Chazal, Ivtzan is Boaz. Boaz, the husband of Ruth. We will get to the book of Ruth in a long time, but we know the story of Ruth, the first convert of Israel. So it sort of makes sense when you're joking about the genetics here of finding girls from outside the clan to marry his sons and marrying his daughters off to people from outside the clan. He's very much about blurring lines. And that's something that we know, of course, about a great hero of ours, Boaz, who wasn't concerned that Ruth was a Moabite. He saw her as an Israelite. He saw her as a member, somebody who had joined his people. And so it's just interesting to theorize that. That's not, I don't think, the reason why Chazal say that Ivtzan is Boaz. The main reason is because he's from Bethlehem. He's from Beit Lechem. And in the story of Ruth, Naomi is from Beit Lechem, and she goes back home. And her husband's cousin, uncle there, Boaz, is alive and in Beit Lechem. Continue now with the next shofet. Vayishpot Acharav Yisrael, Elon has Zvulani. Vayishpot Yisrael Eser Shamim. We have this guy Elon from Zvulun, and he's judged for 10 years. Vayamot Elon has Kudani, Vayikaber Ayalon Be'eretz Kulud, and he dies. Nothing remarkable that we say, nothing that we really know about him. And a third, Vayishpot Acharav et Israel, Avdon ben Hillel HaPiratoni. And after him came Avdon, the son of Hillel, the Piratoni. And I could be incorrect, but I think this is the first person named Hillel. Of course, Hillel will become a very important name during the Talmudic period. Hillel and Shammai, Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai, and so many Hillels afterwards. I believe this is the first Hillel that we are introduced to here in the Tanakh. We're not really introduced to Hillel. We're introduced to the son of Hillel, but at least we have the name. Continue verse 14. Vaylo arba'im banim shloshim b'nei banim yochvim al shivim ayarim vayishpot Yisrael shmona shanim. So here we've gone from somebody who rules Israel for 6 years to somebody who does for 10 years and somebody else who does it for 8 years. So not very long periods of time. We don't hear about Shkot Haaretz. We don't hear about the land attaining peace during their lifetimes. And here we have the story again of somebody who seems to have an enormous amount of wealth. He has 40 sons and 30 grandsons, and he has 70 donkeys. And so we don't know anything about their leadership, which could indicate that they were very good. It could indicate that chronologically they were at this time, or it could indicate that there's really nothing remarkable to say about them. We don't know what it means. And continue the last verse in this chapter 12. Vayamot Avdon ben Hillel hapir atoni, vayikaber b'pir aton be'eretz Ephraim behar ha'amaleki. And so Avdon, the son of Hillel, he dies and he's buried in Aton on the hill of Amalek. And we're not told here at the end of this chapter, we're not told before we're going to start the next story that again, there is no peace. The cycle has been broken. We have problematic leaders. We don't have anything great to say about these gentlemen. I'm not saying we don't know. These last two shoftim could have been amazing leaders, but we're not being told that. And we'll look at it tomorrow. But if you look at the first verse of chapter 13, right away, Vayosif b'nei Yisrael asot hara b'nei Adonai v'neim Adonai b'yad Plishtim arba'im shana. B'nei Yisrael, they sin to God, and God sort of sells them out to the Philistines for 40 years. So we have these shoftim, these last three shoftim, 6 years, 10 years, 8 years, a small period of time. We don't know that it's a time of peace, but we know that there are 40 years of struggle that are occurring now. And so we see that the book has turned. In the beginning, it was 8 years or 10 years or 12 years that the Midianites were controlling, or the Canaanites, or whomever it was. And then there were 40 years of peace, and 80 years of peace is what we're described. And now it's reversed. And now it's more subjugation than freedom. It's more idolatry than worship of God. And that is where we are in this book, as we've gone from wonderful leaders, Ehud and Elimelech and Deborah, and the beginning of his life, Gidon, to Yiftach. And tomorrow we will begin the story of certainly the most intriguing character in this book, and without a question, one of the most intriguing characters in the entire Tanakh, the story of Samson, the story of Shimshon.